In this class we're going to talk about ethics in business research. Now, it's logical to start with what are research ethics? Start with the question, what are research ethics? Well, ethics are norms or standards of behavior that guide moral choices about our behavior and our relationships with others. So ethics are norms or standards of behavior that guide moral choices about our behavior and our relationships with others. Now, the researcher should try to ensure that no one is harmed or suffers from any adverse consequences from research activities. So what research ethics seems to bubble down to is that the researcher should try to ensure that no one is harmed or suffers from any adverse consequences from research activities. No one should be hurt or suffer as a consequence of the research activity. Now, the ethical treatment of respondents, well, there are various steps in this. For a start, explain the following to the respondent. The purpose of the research. Make sure the respondent knows what the research is trying to do. No hidden agenda. Try to be as open and honest as possible about the purpose of the research. And explain the methodology, how it's going to be conducted. What is the research? What techniques will it use? It'll use focus groups or interviews, or what methodology will be used. Try to be as open and honest there as well. Explain the likely benefits expected from the research. Now, in the case of business research, this may be long-term viability of the business. It may be secured employment for many years to come. It may be greater insight into the market and therefore greater security for the firm or for the business in trading, because the business has a greater insight. So explain the expected benefits of the research. Explain to the respondent that their rights and well-being will be adequately protected, and explain how this will be done. Ensure that the respondent knows that their rights will not be affected adversely by participating in the research, that they will not be hurt in any way by the research. And ensure that interviews obtain the informed consent of the respondent. Make sure that the respondents agree, and they agree having determined what the research is about, the nature of the research, the methodology, the benefits of the research, and that their rights are protected. With all of that in place, if the respondents agree, that's informed consent. So try to get informed consent from the respondent before the research takes place. Deception. Well, in some cases a small degree of deception may be acceptable, provided it does not hurt the respondent. This does not tolerate lies, but may accept omissions and half-truths. This is a very slippery area, but researchers seem to get into it. Sometimes they don't disclose everything about the research, on the basis that it doesn't hurt the respondent, it doesn't affect the respondent in any great way, and it enables better explanations and better clarity to result as a consequence. But by and large, it's a slippery slope, and it should be avoided if possible. But it does happen. It does happen that if the respondent is not adversely affected, then the respondent may not be told the whole truth. They may omit certain issues and certain topics. It may be used to prevent biasing the respondents before the survey or experiment. To avoid bias, certain issues may not be disclosed. or indeed to protect the confidentiality of a third party, protect the confidentiality of another person. So perhaps the interviewer doesn't want to say who has already participated in the interviews. So they ask the respondent to participate, but they don't tell the respondent who has already participated. So that may happen from time to time. Issues related to protecting respondents. Well, there could be informed consent. It's important to get this from the respondents. The respondents, as I said earlier, should know the facts, know about the research, know all about the research, be fully briefed about what the research is attempting to do and how it will be done and what protection is in place for the respondents. And if the respondents agree, that's informed consent. And it's important to get that at the start. And debriefing, to ensure that the respondents' views are accurately captured and portrayed. Don't misquote the respondent. Don't mislead the respondent. Don't inaccurately record what the respondent is saying through bad recording practice or lack of care and attention. Ensure that what the respondent said is accurately captured. And give confidentiality pledge if required. And these must be respected and honoured. If they're given, they must be respected and honoured. So if the person doesn't want his or her name to be associated with the research, and that's acceptable, then give a confidentiality agreement and honour it. Make sure that his or her name does not appear anywhere against the research. And there's a right to privacy. Ensure that the respondent is not pressurised and their privacy is respected if requested. So the fact that someone has been selected doesn't mean that they should participate or they can be forced to participate. They've just been selected to participate. Doesn't mean that they can be bullied into it. If they want to remain private and do not want to participate, that must be respected. Now the ethical issues and the client. Well, research requires resources, and these are funded by clients who wish to benefit from the research. So the research is funded by clients who wish to benefit from the research. Now, sponsor non-disclosure. Sponsors have a right to privacy also. However, the respondents' rights have primacy. I explain. A research is normally sponsored by someone. They want to have some information about some aspect of the business. The business may sponsor the research itself. But they don't want the respondents to know that they're sponsoring it. So the respondents, the people being interviewed, let's say, are not told who's financing the research. There's non-disclosure of the sponsor. But if there's any conflict between the respondents' rights to privacy and those of the clients, those of the sponsors, the respondents' rights have primacy. They must come first. The person being interviewed is most important. The person sponsoring the research is second, not first. The respondent is all important. So the respondent's rights have primacy. The purpose non-disclosure. The purpose of the research should be open. However, some cases may justify secrecy. For example, sensitive medical research or police work or some other areas. In business, it may be protection of some intellectual property, of some innovative process that the business is currently working on. So there may be a case for non-disclosure based on those circumstances. Findings non-disclosure, well, ideally all involved in the research activity should be informed of the extent of the disclosure. So the respondents should know how much disclosure there will be of the findings, and obviously the client who funds it in the first place, they must know how much disclosure there will be as well. So there are issues there that both the respondents and the clients must know how much disclosure will come out of the exercise at the end, how much information will be passed back to them. Now, ethical issues relating to the researchers. Well, first of all, to safety. Some research activities may entail hazards for the researcher, and these should be fully understood and steps taken to minimize them. It's important that the researchers be safe in conducting the research. In business, it may be researching into some production process which may have hazards associated with it. The ethical behaviour of assistants. Well, when research is conducted in teams, care must be taken to ensure the well-being of members of the team. They must be fully briefed and trained and roles clearly explained. So the team must be protected, and everybody within the team must know their place and their duties. And there is the protection of anonymity. A respondent may request anonymity, and this should be honoured. If a respondent doesn't want to be named as having taken place and taken part in the research, that should be honoured. If that's not acceptable, then that person should be excluded. But if it's not necessary to know the name and address and details of the person who's providing the information, then that anonymity should be honoured. So a respondent may request this, and if so, it should be honoured. Now, these are some issues associated with the ethics of research as related to various parties associated with the research: the client, the respondent, and the researchers. And that's all we're going to do in this session. I'm going to leave it at that. It's an important class, I suppose, like all the other videos are important. But go back over it, make your own notes, and see if you can research some more into this topic. It's a topic that's often overlooked, but one becoming increasingly more important. And nowadays, researchers are briefed, or should be briefed, adequately and totally on the need to take ethical considerations into account when designing research activities. That's all we're going to do for the moment, so I'm going to leave it at that and say thank you for watching.